Disclaimer. This podcast features a conversation between two individuals regarding assistive technology. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this episode belong solely to the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of their respective employers. Furthermore, this discussion is for informational purposes only.
Hi, welcome to Assistive Tech Today podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Lavodi, and today we have a special guest with us, Gabriella Francis, who is a doctor of OT, and she has a few other credentials, which we'll let her elaborate on all that. But Gabriella, welcome to Assistive Tech Today podcast.
Thank you so much, Vinny. I'm so happy to be here and get this time to chat with you.
So tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what your background is and what you're doing now.
Yeah, awesome. So my background, so I got my undergraduate degree in athletic training from the University of Delaware. During that time, I really fell in love with like adaptive sports and that sort of thing. So then I knew that I kind of wanted to go on to get my master's in occupational therapy. I'm very grateful I did that at NYU. I got to meet some amazing mentors who showed me what it's like to be an OT as a part of a design and development team for different products. Got to work with the NYU Ability Lab, which I think is a really cool experience. Kind of fell in love with this space, this intersection of healthcare and technology. I started working as a clinician inpatient rehab at Rusk, NYU Langone, and then I got to utilize technology with patients as well. So really kind of gained a lot of experience within that space, knew I wanted to kind of build out a role and expand the role that OTs can play in designing and developing assistive and health technologies. So went on to do my post-professional doctorate at NYU. Then I started, consulting for different companies who were building products either for clinicians or for the people that we treat as this kind of subject matter expert. I've worked with many different companies. We can dive into some of the different products that I've worked on in the past. So ultimately became a product manager at a really cool company. I also want to give a plug to. They're called Level the Curve. Both of the founders have spinal cord injuries themselves, and they build out different pieces of tech for people with spinal cord injuries. So I kind of fell in love with this idea of like user-centered design through them. I started consulting for a company called Squeg, and I can get into, what our product is and what we do. But essentially, it's redefining upper extremity rehab with a digital device, allowing for assessment, training, and tracking of different upper extremity functions.
Cool. Very cool tech. And guys, as we always say, we'll always put links in the show notes to everything that Gabrielle is talking about today. So don't worry, you'll be able to follow up on everything that she's talked about today. Before you get started, I always say I've had a lot of SLPs on the podcast. It hasn't been out that long, but I was always wanting to get some of my OT friends on here. So I was glad that you were able to get on the schedule with me and do this, because I always say the OT is the Swiss Army knife of therapists, because they have to know a little bit of everything. They do PT, OT, and a little bit of speech. They kind of have to mix. They cross many areas, maybe more so than some of the other therapists do. Everybody's got an important part. It's always a team effort, when we're trying to help people. So, but I'm definitely appreciative, of what you guys do and how you help people. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about. You obviously are working in the software and the hardware space, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So whatever you want to start with, you wanted to talk about the company that you're working with now, with your product. I'd love to share that with the viewers.
Sure. Yeah, we can start there. Happy to touch on all the different, kind of products that I've worked on in the past as well. So the company that I'm at right now is called Squeg. I can show you what it looks like. We have a hardware device, FDA registered, and then we have two software applications. One for individuals to use at home, and then another specifically made for clinicians. And these applications create a nice ecosystem. So we can essentially test maximal grip strength measurement with the device, and
Mm.
then three different prehension patterns. So we could do the tripod pinch here, the lumbrical pinch here, and then also your lateral pinch here. And we're able to do this. The device connects to the applications, any smartphone or tablet via Bluetooth. And then we have these fun games and activities that I got to build out with our team that specifically work on different areas of hand function. So everything from, increasing grip strength, maximal grip strength to isometric activities, to even some working on reaction time, coordination, cognition, those sorts of things. Um, and then we also have a really nice tracking system that will allow you to track patient progress longitudinally or your own progress even
Right.
over time.
So both the patient can have an app to for the when they're using it at home, and then you have
Yep.
your obviously for the clinician is to gauge. So that's really cool. I mean, obviously you're checking, seeing what their fine motor skills are, and then that's cool that you have apps so they can do like or games so they can
Yeah.
make it fun. I'm a huge component of isometrics. I've used it myself for rehab. I've used a lot of equipment that's isometric based. I'm going to have somebody on that's a company that's involved with that hopefully down the road.
Nice.
Um, but so it's definitely really, really neat. And I like that you have it as like almost a game because then it makes people want to do it as opposed to, oh, I got to do these therapeutic exercises. Sometimes people don't want to do it, but if it's a
Yeah.
game and they're not even realizing they're actually building the
Exactly.
dexterity, building that strength back up, which is so important to have good dexterity and good hand strength.
Oh yeah, it's tied to so many things. I mean, your hands are how you interact with the world on a day-to-day
Right.
basis, right? But I could go on for days about how I think grip strength is the next vital sign as well. Like it's
That
tied to so
I've been
many
seeing
different
that so
things.
much recently in the
Yeah.
news saying, if your grip strength measures how good your longevity and kind of makes sense. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
it's an important component of we just take for granted that we use every day. If we don't
Ab
have a disability, we don't give too much thought about it. But if you have cerebral palsy or some other physical disability, it's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And having accurate data to represent that over time that's really easy to also get is important. So our assessment, we follow standardized assessments, ASHD guidelines, even down to like positioning and the flow. So we do, for a grip strength measurement, we'll do both hands, alternating hands, 3 attempts, and then the average of that. And
Hmm.
that whole process is super easy. It takes less than 30 seconds to do it. And yeah, it's reliable. So we have studies to show the psychometrics of the device as well. So in-person assessment versus at-home assessment, things like that. So it's
I've been
really cool.
I've been saying for years people don't realize the mobile. I've been in consumer tech as well. The mobile market has catapulted a lot of tech that we have today, and so, getting the data, that's so important for a clinician is to basically read the data and see where we're going, if we're making strides forward or we're going backwards. They've made it so you just use a smartphone or a tablet. You don't need a lot of clunky hardware, and then everything's Bluetooth. It's very simple to connect. The learning curve is a lot less than some of the maybe more sophisticated stuff that's been used in the past. But just to have that data on the fly is
Hmm.
like definitely makes your job as a clinician is, I don't know if I want to say it's easier, but it allows you to do it much more efficiently and a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, I know you mentioned this a little while ago, but just the idea of having the games being fun and engaging, you really do see like people will get distracted almost and they won't realize how many grips that they're doing or pinch,
Hmm.
repetitions that they're
Right.
getting within a certain time frame. But because we're a software, we're able to capture that data. And at the end of every game or activity, it actually shows you very detailed, like the max that you achieved during that time, the amount of grips that you or pinch prehension patterns that you repetitions that you received during that time. So you can really track how people are performing and they're almost distracted in a sense. So you get a lot of buy-in from individuals and greater compliance with whatever home program that you're prescribing for them. We've seen that across the board, which is key, right? Because as a clinician, what have we been doing in the past, right? Um, you're in an outpatient setting, you have a patient, you prescribe a home program, how do you know if they do it or not, right? You're just going off of their word. They come into the clinic, you say, "Oh, did you do these?" They're like, "Oh, yeah, I think so," you know?
Hmm.
But wouldn't it be great if you could actually see if they were doing it Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
Right.
or, 3 times a day, or how whatever you prescribe to them, right? Like if you had clear objective data to showcase whether they're actually doing and compliant in compliance with their home exercise
Right.
program, that would be
Absolutely.
really helpful as
So
well.
is that product something like if I was like, I'm not gonna, if I search on the web and look it up, is it something that somebody can buy on their own, or is it something that they have to get through, having a therapist work with them either? And I'm assuming PTs can also prescribe
Yep.
this because obviously it's part of physical therapy as well.
Yeah, yeah. So we are commercially available to anyone who wants to purchase. You can go right on our website. We wanted to build that into our pricing model as well. Like we wanted it to be affordable. So, affordable, but yet have all the evidence to back it. So that's what we were shooting
Does
for.
does insurance cover the product? Just curious. Or is it's a not insurance?
Yeah, yeah. So there are ways that it can be covered via insurance. So if you're doing, I'm not sure if you're familiar with RTM codes at all, remote therapeutic monitoring, but there's a system in which if you're, seeing a clinician, you can actually get the device through this process, right? Like they cover a certain amount of it. And then what happens is you utilize it at home, and then your clinician can check in on the data to see, how you're performing, and then they can get reimbursed for that time. But a part of that does actually cover the cost of the device as well.
Okay.
But then also we're FSA, HSA covered as well. So you
Okay.
can
That's
use,
cool.
yeah,
So
your
you can
health
use your
savings
dot, your
accounts and
flex dollars and
things like
everything.
that.
Great,
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
No, that's
Yeah.
cool. Hey, the more ways you can make something accessible, the better chances you'll have of it, people actually using it and hopefully
That's the
helping
hope,
them.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to help them. So it's always a win-win then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, other than the product that you just showed us, what else are you working on, or is there more to dive into the product that you want to share that we should know about?
Yeah, let me think. I would say that coming from my clinical background, the one thing that I have really tried to implement team-wide, and we really did adopt it, is just being something that's built kind of for clinicians and patients by clinicians. So I've made it a strong point to, really listen to user feedback, see what's working, and then build accordingly. So I did just kind of want to highlight that because I don't necessarily think that it's common practice right now within how, you know, people are building products, but it's something that I believe very strongly. So we love to partner with different clinics or hospitals who are utilizing our device to get feedback from them. And then it's like a direct feedback loop, right? Like I've had clinicians say, I think this, you guys should build out a game that works on cognition. And we're like, okay, let's build it. And then we get to work with them to see like what would actually fit for that use case. And then it winds up helping a lot more people than just, who we built it for. So it's been really cool to be a part of a team that is so user focused, and being able to actually build for a solution that will have an impact. So I
Yeah.
did just kind of want to mention that as
No, that's
well.
an important fact, and that's definitely going to make it a better product because I'm a product tester myself, and feedback is critical. And when you deploy something like at my job, we make products and then we deploy it. You don't always have everything figured out. You have a certain set of parameters you think it would be useful. Then you have somebody who's very creative, a therapist, say, "Hey, we're using it XYZ way," and you're like, "Wow, I never thought of that." And
Yeah.
you just get more information, and then you can make refinements based. If need be, you could say, "Okay, well, if you're going to use it this way, maybe we need to make this modification here or there." So that ongoing dialogue is so important to make products evolve to become better. And that's definitely I think that's the right way to make a product.
Me and you both, Finny. We both agree on that.
Well, they
But
say great minds think alike.
cheers to us. But yeah, I do think also though something to touch on, yes, it's great to build out like new product features that would be useful, but it's also helpful to listen to people about like what their pain points are with using your product so you can help streamline flows and make it easier and more user friendly. So I actually have an anecdotal example from this. So we initially, when we were building out the clinician flow, right? We wanted to get more details during the onboarding process with the hopes of having this data to be able to create new norms, right? So in my mind, I want to create like grip strength norms exist, right? The JMR dynamometer is the gold standard. Their norms are a little outdated. We, have 32 million grips and counting, so we're able to create new norms based off of healthy populations. But I would love to have normative data for certain disease populations, like certain stages of diseases. Like I want to get down to a point where it's like, you're a woman in your 30s post distal radius fracture. This is what other people, like the progress that they're seeing, uh, you know, 6 weeks out, 10 weeks
Right.
out, 2 months out, you know what I mean? To make it more meaningful. So because we were thinking about this, right? And saying, okay, it could be really cool to get this. We created an onboarding flow that took a little bit too much like time, right? Like clinicians already have their EMR systems. They don't want to be like taking time out of their day to like double, report on the same thing and
Right.
putting in information that's already somewhere else. So we're like, okay, maybe we just take what's absolutely needed, like the bare minimum, which is age, gender, hand dominance, to be able to show the norms that we have already, and make the flow 10 seconds instead of a minute. And then we saw adoption like skyrocket from that too, right? So I think it's really important to listen to your customers, listen to the individuals who you're building things for, and be able to make it as easy of a process as possible.
It's got to work for them. It's got to fit into their schedule. Otherwise, they
Yeah,
won't do it, like you said.
their workflow. Yeah, exactly.
I've seen this with some of the speech therapists that I've had on. We've talked about some of the technology that's available today, like the Amazon products that you can talk to. I'm not going to say because it'll set off from my house. Um, they have articulation down for people that like you and I who speak normal, other than my New York accent. Uh, but somebody who has some type of disability that affects their speech, they may not make enunciations properly, or they may not articulate properly. There's really no database for that. So they were working, one of the people I had on, they were working with some of the big tech companies to create a database so that these devices now can become useful for people who don't have good speech. So kind of same premise what you're saying. There's no there's no database to have like for people with disabilities to look at like what the norm is and where if they're within that range. So that's great. Again, knowledge is always power. So the more knowledge we have, the better we can help people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on a really important point there too, which I'd like to discuss a little bit more, which is
Mhm.
technology surrounds us, right? And as the number of people with disabilities grow, like they're one of the largest consumer groups, right? Sitting at like 22%, I think, and growing. Um, like as consumer technology and healthcare merge, like we need to make sure that we're creating for all individuals in mind. So like right now, what happens a lot of times with clinicians who work in the space, OTs, SLPs, speech and PTs, are basically these like aftermarket adaptations. So you're customizing prefabricated pieces of equipment or these off-the-shelf products, but it's not going to be sustainable, right? Like as technology is integrated into like every aspect of our lives. So I'm a big believer, and this is what I did as a part of my doctoral work, but I think that OTs are the perfect candidate to be able to help like research, design, and develop for inclusion to make sure that this accessibility is being met, and usability for all people, before these products enter the market instead of these like aftermarket adaptations. So I'm a big proponent of clinicians like being in the space, getting a seat at the table, and really being like disability advocates in that
Right.
sense.
They have a
Yeah.
lot of information to offer, and you'd be foolish not to take it because they're going to help you make a product that's going to sell and be a better product.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. And it's doing good, right? Like
yeah,
you're just ensuring that everyone can utilize whatever you're building. So,
absolutely. Why make something if it's not going to be usable?
yeah,
Kind of
very
defeats
cool.
the purpose. So what else what else is something important you think we'd want to share with the listeners and viewers today that you've been working on?
There's so many different areas we could dive into.
Well,
Anything,
if
yeah,
we
top
run
of
out of
mind?
time, we could always have you back on if you want to be back on again. I always like to have guests back on if they have more information to share.
Yeah. Um, I always like to advocate for occupational therapists within this role. So I think maybe I'll take a little bit of time to kind of say what I believe our superpowers are and kind of like why we deserve a seat at the table. So I think that OTs have this very unique lens, and we like to say that like we're using our OT lens, but a lot of times we're like, what does that mean? But I think it's the keen ability to basically be able to break down like an activity, analyze each step, the person, the environment, and the context, and be able to make modifications or, work on certain areas to basically optimize function. At the end of the day, we're helping people participate in meaningful activities. And those are really what occupations are. I know a lot of times within the general public, there's this confusion of like what OTs do. And they're like,
Right.
like I've walked into a hospital room before and like was like, okay, I'm gonna be, I'm Gabby, I'm gonna be your OT. And they're like, occupational therapist. And they're like, occupation, I don't have a job, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, no, no. I'm gonna help you work on your daily activities, everything that you
Right.
do from the
That
time you wake up to the time you go to bed. If there's something that's giving you a little bit of trouble, I can help you be able to do it more successfully, or
that was
whatever that looks like for you.
that was a question I was
Yeah.
going to say. I get that asked. Like, well, they're like, why do they call them occupational therapists? Like you said, if somebody's retired and they don't have an occupation, but then why are they called the OTs? But just your daily living is an occupation.
It's how you spend your time. An occupation
Exactly.
is anything that you do throughout the day, right?
Right.
And that's why I love this profession so much because we can do so much across the lifespan. It's very broad, but then you get, very like there's different individuals who focus primarily on specific things as well. So it can be very broad, but then you can also become
Be
super
very
niche.
fine-tuned.
Yes,
Very
yes,
fine-tuned. Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think OTs are disability experts, right? Like we work in self-advocacy. We help empower individuals to have their own needs heard and understood. Um, we work in multidisciplinary teams already, like with our SLP, PT colleagues. And, it doesn't matter which clinical setting you're working at or which setting in general you're working in. We work in interdisciplinary teams.
Right.
Um, we also have a research background. So, we can look at the selection of appropriate outcome measures to see like if something that you're prescribing or an intervention that you're doing is actually working.
Right.
And evidence is so important when you talk about assistive technology and adoption, especially for clinicians who are so evidence-based within their practice. So it's important to actually get those publications out and have I have a professor or I had a professor who would always go, show me the data, like show me the research. Like, is this thing actually going to work? You know what I mean? But yeah, I think it's all of these superpowers kind of combined that make OTs, really great at, working within the space, identifying needs, identifying problems, and then coming up with creative solutions to help individuals and, whatever it is that they're trying to do that's meaningful to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so important. I mean, at my job being I'm an assistive tech specialist, I'm an AT consultant, and there's always challenges every day. You think everything would be figured out and they're not. And that's, I guess, part of the fun part of my job that, I like the challenge. And then, you put your heads together with the therapist and say, well, hey, if what we have here isn't working, let's see what we could do to make it work for this individual. And that's when you can do that, it's very rewarding that you've actually empowered somebody or given them something they need that wasn't there before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what made me so drawn to this profession as a whole too, right? Like just getting to work with people and getting to see like the light that can come back to someone from
Mhm.
being in a state where they, felt like they couldn't do something, simple things, right? Like brushing your teeth or going to the bathroom by yourself, you know what I mean? All the way to more complex tasks, IAD, things like that, instrumental activities of daily living and, whatever is important to them on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's
Right.
so important to be client-centered in that sense and help
Right.
them get back to
And have some
what's
independence
important.
because, people don't want to have to rely on other people to do things for them. So, I mean, I always say all the therapists, the job is a calling. It's not just something you decided, oh, today I want to be an OT or I want to be an SLP or a PT. It's a calling. It's something that you feel like you're passionate about it. You care about what you do and you care about the
Hmm.
people you help. So, it's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anything else that we should touch on that any interesting projects that might be of interest?
Yeah, so I also, as a part of, what I do and what I'm passionate about, I also help consult for a couple different companies.
Hmm.
I won't get into too much about specifically like what they do, but there is so much cool technology out there. Um, and I encourage whether you're a clinician who feels passionately about the space and you want to get involved, like I encourage clinicians all the time to reach out to companies and say like, "Hey, do you have a clinician on your team? I think it would be really beneficial to have this voice and this expertise, domain expertise for involved in the process of what you're building, and also a calling to my other colleagues, companies out there, really value the voice of your end users and the yeah individuals who can bring in that domain expertise to help you build out the right solution. So I applaud the companies who hire clinicians, and I hope to see it kind of more mainstream across the board.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it just makes for a better product for people to use it. Um, you got to take the feedback, and you need it just drives to make a good product.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I know that,
Sometimes
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say sometimes engineers they may have the skill set to make something, but they may not understand fully like the end users, and that's where like if you had an OT, they say, hey, I like the way you made this, but if you did this or that, this would work better. And then it turns like that light bulb on in their head. You guide them. You basically
Yeah.
guide them.
Oh, it's a team effort, right? I
Yeah.
think, okay, so one of the kind of pivotal moments within my training has been I took this course while I was at NYU. It was called Developing Assistive Technology. It was with the Abilities Lab. And what they did was they paired students from occupational therapy students from Steinhardt, Tandon, and Tisch. So design students, engineering students. And we came together and we learned about the process of how to take something like a problem that a real life individual was having and take that idea, iterate on it, like rapid, fast prototyping, getting feedback, doing that iterative feedback loop, and then ultimately creating a solution for that individual or group of people. And this was such a cool experience because it was, interdisciplinary in the fact that they took students from these different schools. And some really amazing projects have come out of that, right? Like I worked on an adaptive toothbrush, for example. So we worked with the NYU dentistry, the clinic that they have, to be able to kind of understand a need. And what they were seeing was an issue with preventative care. So they were seeing kiddos or individuals with disabilities who had like limited hand dexterity, um, not able to brush,
Brush properly.
right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. And that's a huge market of people, and then what they were seeing were cavities and all of these things down the line. But how can you come at it from hit it from the actual ADL itself? How can you modify a toothbrush or come up with a creative
Mhm.
toothbrush that would actually be able to enable someone to be able to brush independently with their limitations? So that was a super cool product that we got to kind of build out. And yes, it was just a student project, but now, for example, Simple Brush is an amazing company. I actually just met them at the most recent AOTA conference in Anaheim, and they're a commercially available product. Like it's solving for the same need. It's helping people be independent with, a very meaningful ADL brushing and helps so much down the line, right? Like preventing cavities, preventing, yeah, so many other
I mean,
things.
your oral health can affect your whole body too, like heart
Yes.
issues. There's so many
Your
things that, it trickles down. So yeah, that's definitely a good thing, You would think something like, oh, it's just a toothbrush. No, it's a lot more than just a toothbrush. It can affect a lot of your other health. So no,
Absolutely.
that's cool. That's a good team building thing. All the students, they learn how to, they bring their strengths forward, but they work together and you learn how to collaborate. So
Yep.
that'll serve them well when they go out into the job world and they have to work on, if they're working on a project with other people. So it's definitely definitely a good skill set to have. Team building, able to work with other people to, come up with a common goal that you need to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. And some really cool products come out of it, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, and meaningful products. Yeah.
I
So
think a lot of
it's
that
awesome.
comes out too when you start working on things, you start brainstorming together because then people start throwing ideas back and forth and they kind of meld and then all of a sudden like, oh wait, we could do this or oh we could do that. So that's it. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to work in a design team at my job at Enabling Devices, so I'm part of the design team and I talk mostly to the customers, so I bring the feedback from the customers to the team meetings and to on the projects and say, this is what we find and this is what's happening. And I oversee things when they come back for repair, see where they need to be improved. So it's a continual evolution, just continually just working and making things
Yeah,
evolve.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Any specific projects that you're working on or products that you're working on now that are
Uh,
exciting?
we're doing some custom stuff. I actually had a gentleman. I know we don't have that much time left, but I'll talk about it really quick. I had a gentleman that reached out to us. He actually found us with ChatGTP. And they said, check enabling devices. They might be able to help you. So he was a paraplegic drummer and he really couldn't drum anymore. So he had a electric hi-hats that he needed to activate, but you need your feet with usually mechanical pedals. So I said, what about if we rigged up a sip and puff for you? So
Yeah.
I made a headset first with a sip and puff straw that comes up so he can blow, puff or sip and actuate the hi-hats. And he
I have,
said it works great. We're doing some modifications. I might put a different headset for him, but he was like so thankful. He goes, I went to three other companies in the music and they basically couldn't help me.
yeah.
So it's like nobody had anything out there already. And that's why I said, today's it's 2026. You think we have all this stuff figured out? No. So, and it's a challenge. So we like the challenge. And I say, hey, listen, we don't always hit a home run on the first try. I said, I'm not expecting it to be perfect. And he was like, no, I can't believe you kind of envisioned what I was thinking about. And it's like 90% there right out of out of the gate. I can't believe you guys did that. I'm like, I'm fortunate enough to work with a bunch of talented people that we have a good communication and good rapport. We kind of read each other's minds at this point. We've been working together for so long. We kind of figure out like I was working with my designer Bill and I'm like, Bill, I want to try and modify this thing. I said, maybe you need to make a new part. And then like 20 minutes later, he's like, Vin, I think this is what we need. And he
Yeah.
shows me the piece. He already did it. I was like, I didn't even have to elaborate any further. He knew exactly what I was talking about.
That's
And then
awesome.
we just put it together. So
And how
within like,
meaningful for your client, right?
yeah,
Like
he was super ecstatic and we were glad to help him. So like I say,
really
that's
cool.
that's the win-win when you can do that. And he said, you don't realize what this means to me. He was almost crying. He's like to bring back something that didn't think I was going to get back. So, again, people today, we take for granted what we have every day that until you don't have it and then you realize how precious it is. So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Very
so
cool.
we're almost out of time. Anything you want to share on as a closing as we wrap this up? And like I said, if you're game, we'll definitely have you come back on and we'll dive into something else.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I think that the work that we're all doing and anyone that's listening to this podcast is interested in this space as well. Like it's so, so important. So thank you so much for having me on here and giving me the opportunity to get to discuss these really important topics with you today. I think that if you're a clinician and you're looking to transition into some of these non-clinical spaces, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm more than happy to connect you with different groups that I'm a part of as well to build a network and a community because I really think it is important to have our voices heard to build out meaningful solutions for individuals. So
That's great. And like I said earlier, guys, we'll definitely put all this information, Gabriella's information, in the show notes so that if you want to reach out to her as well, that would be, and maybe become part of the team, or, help other people and use your superpowers for other goods.
There you go. There you
So,
go.
so with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. And this has been Assistive Tech Today podcast, your host, Vinny Lavodi, and our special guest, Gabriella Francis. We thank you so much for being a guest. And like we say, guys, there's another one in the books, and we'll see you all on the next podcast. Take care, everyone.